Thank you for joining. I was introducing you, which I think most people who follow me need no introduction to you as a board certified psychiatrist whose passion is TMS and amazing, renewable, sustainable mental health tech that helps resolve psychiatric issues at their root rather than years and years of running around and beating around the bushes. So great. It's great to reunite with you, Dr. Owen Muir.
Always. We got it named as a field by a colleague as brain medicine. So Josh Brown at Harvard wrote this article about brain medicine, and when I'm explaining it to people, I say, well, it's like neurology and psychiatry renewed their vows with
Yes.
neurosurgery as the officiant.
Wow. Okay. Love that. I mean, it's about time, right? I think it's so much with depression and OCD has been unresponsive. And now we have deep brain stimulation. So today I wanted to talk to you about the Talk of the Town, the newish Manosphere documentary from Louis Theroux, and what your thoughts are. If you haven't seen it, what your thoughts are around the dialogue, capital D
Yeah.
in
So
general.
I haven't seen the documentary yet. I mostly because I don't get to watch a lot of TV.
Not
You can tell
surprising.
me where it is, but I was just following up on the news about clavicular, for example.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just to define the manosphere, I guess, for the purposes of this conversation
Of
and
course.
for the audience who may or may not be familiar. That's kind of
Yeah. So the Manosphere is a corner of the internet, essentially a self-identified group of masculine, mostly men, but you can argue there's some women in there like Pearl Davis, just pearly things. It's a pro-male, I think they would say, segment of the internet. And some of the people are relatively non-toxic. The ones that there's a lot of ideas that are very controversial and wrong and stuff for the views that's controversial that gets out there. And so, but essentially it's the men's rights sort of vibe. It's a collection of people who have decided to address what they think are the ills of society now and the lack of masculinity. But their answers vary though. And so in the documentary, you see people whose answer is get famous and try to sell things. And someone who gets followed quite often, a streamer by the name of HS Tiki Talkie, which is like a British slang. You can kind of tell that way of referring like Tiki Talkie. It's very cheeky, who does so much uh, streaming about anti OnlyFans, anti this, anti that, but then he crosses over with OnlyFans artists for the views and the controversy. And so Thoreau follows him throughout this documentary saying, well, why are you doing this? What if it were your daughter? You hate this so much. He's like, everything's for the views. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I can hate it and profit off it. So, and that's a lot of the documentary. And the one thing I would say is I wish it went over more of the men's mental health struggles that we know of from suicidology, traumatology, you name it. But it looks at the exploitative side of the manosphere that's always trying to sell something to young men, much like any marketing that says, just do this and you'll be the archetype of masculinity.
as the archetype of masculinity. It's hard for me to relate to why I would want to buy anything because I'm already so male.
Sure.
This is a joke, but it
Good
does seem
disclaimer.
like if you go far enough down any anti anything thread, there's always a supplement for sale. It's like. And part of that is it is like it's an appealing sales pitch, especially to young men, maybe to older men as well, because we're adrift. There's not a good playbook for being a dude anymore. Can't just go lift weights. Maybe you can do that to excess, but that's not good enough. You have to whack yourself in the face with a hammer if you're looks maxing. It gets weird really quick. I have a newsletter that people can subscribe to, and some do, and some pay me money. I get wanting to have paid subscribers. That's good, but it's not as good of a financial model as selling dubious supplements or I guess face hammers or whatever. I don't know. Is there a
Yeah, I think they
specific
should.
hammer for your face?
What did you say?
Is there a hammer specifically for your face? I mean, there's got to be.
Well, yeah, I think so. He's bone maxing or whatever it's called, bone formation. I mean, so clavicular is an interesting story, and that's a really good one to go into because I mean, say what you want about him, he practices what he preaches, and we know that the bottleneck of dating that's happened with culture where it's almost, and I've used this metaphor, it's like dating is like going to the bathroom. You have an app for it, you go there, it's kind of a dirty subject, you just do it. Everybody does it, but you don't talk about it. Or if you do, it's got kind of a sad tint to it. It's kind of weird. So you think about, like, I watched The Sting a few weeks ago because I have a really good Regal near me that has a deal on old movies. And I'm part of Regal, $20 a month club, see unlimited movies. Wish I got sponsored by them, not yet. But, and this thing, like you look at the way men and women used to have repartee, and it's not creepy. It's not like, oh, I want to bed every one of these women. But men don't learn that now. Dating could be anywhere back in the day. And you probably remember that time. And I kind of do, because you and I are not light years apart. But this idea that, there's a point to this, I promise. So clavicular comes from a world as a Zoomer, a Gen Zer, you either do day game and you hit on women in public, or you go to apps. And on apps, you got to really, really, really stand out and be hot for the camera because there's so much stimuli for anybody online. So he's a product of late stage capitalist dating practices of be the best you can for that square, like what we're on right now, to attract women and in person too. But this idea of face maxing for men, the vanity for men has directly correlated with how much you have to have a picture, your trading card of yourself to get attention. And I think we have to help young men understand it's not natural. It's not really an evolutionary model. We're kind of changing trajectory and maxing out parts of evolution that are very primal. And we're going to have to compensate with frontal lobe practices, mindfulness, mentalization that helps to avoid getting sucked into that square and into a despondency.
Yeah, I mean, so just to let the audience know the data behind this. So dating apps
Please.
are an unequal marketplace, right? So when you're only looking at a square of someone, 10% of men get functionally 100% of the swipes.
Thank you.
And, and so women are in this unfortunate position where they go on dates with essentially the same 10 dudes out of every 100. And every woman thinks, oh my God, these guys are such F boys. Like
Mhm.
they treated me like I was disposable because they're dating you and all your friends. And then the 90% of men, people who, look something like this, some kind of average, most of what we have to offer women is not how we look. Like the
Mhm.
overwhelming majority is being gracious or, funny or something at first. And then eventually you find out this is someone who you really do click with, which takes a little bit of time
Correct.
for historically. Like men are not lookers. We are not the peacocks of our species.
Right.
It's overwhelmingly women. Even men's fashion is understated, right? It's like you can spend a ton of
Functional.
money to get like the buttons on your sleeve that actually open versus close.
Yeah. Right.
But it's not showy in a square and
No,
for
it's not.
less than a second when you're just sorting because it's not
Yeah.
matching, it's sorting.
Mm,
And essentially
yes.
that sorting algorithm for all women is basically some degree of symmetry and how hot your face is. And maybe if you have a shirtless pic, that's good for some cohort, but not another. But 90% of men are just not in the game. And
Yeah.
so Clavicular's thesis that you have to be facially very appealing and go to any lengths to get there isn't wrong if
Mm-mm.
all you're talking about is dating apps.
Right. You nailed.
If you have a tunnel vision, the only world that exists is the one where the only women who matter are the one who will swipe right with you on Tinder. Well, then that is a grim reality, and it does have some sort of internal logic to brutalize your face into somehow getting better by whacking it with a hammer. The theory is with looks maxing, if you cause microfractures in your bones, it can change your face.
Yes.
And I guess that like there's not really good science around that. The argument is at once for symmetry and whacking your face symmetrically with a hammer, which I imagine, like even if it was physically possible, the chance that anyone who happens upon it on the internet is going to do it exactly right seems low.
Yeah, it used to be mewing. Mewing was the big thing. Tongue to the top of the mouth, the
Mhm.
roof of the mouth, excuse me, keeping your jawline good. So I love what you're saying. I think we're looking at, and this is not, I'm one person who talks about this, but this idea of returning to kind of harem dynamics of, because when I hear you say 10% of the guys, all the women, it's very much an ancient evolutionary thing, very much a Genghis Khan sort of vibe. And how do you compete with that as a male? Well, through, it used to be more the gladiatorial thing, pesky, violent stuff that's part of our history and we've moved away from. But now you're making me think like the looks maxing is really a sort of it's a rite of passage similar to getting heavily tattooed or showing off as a male that you can endure great pain for the beauty of your culture. But in our culture, the great pain for the beauty is facial symmetry and kind of just stereotypical conventional attractiveness. And so now trying to modify yourself to be the caricature, the archetype of that makes complete sense because the more you get into intense competitive pressures, the more you're going to have men who just want a chance doing more and more and more extreme things because the bar's moved. for that
And
80%.
and I'm willing to bet the majority of the people providing this information to them are other men,
Yeah.
not actually the target market of the women they don't spend a lot of time with. Because again, it's possible to have a whole life and never go outside.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely, it is now.
You
I
just never
scary.
meet a woman in real life.
Yeah. Well, friction's gone. Interpersonal friction, going to the store, having to make eye contact. You can block it with the phone. You can order Uber Eats. So if you're in public, everything can be blocked by your phone. You don't have to experience anxiety or rejection, and you can order most things. So I love what you're saying. And when I have male clients, like the conversation is, what are you doing to show value? Like there's so much research showing women prefer travel over men. Now, I know you travel a lot, and so I don't think this, I think I'm just going to own generalizing isn't useful. Pointing at general trends is useful. So men have to build up competency culture specific ways. Usually it's through feats of strength or competency in some way, through dexterity, cognitive strength now in our information age, whatever. But so they have to hone that, and that's less immediately, as you said, visually appealing. So that's something men have to do now if they want to escape the matrix of online percent of men getting, excuse me, 20% of men getting 8% of women, that figure. And you've said even 90%. So of men out there without anything, and it's the 10% that are doing great. I would just
But
say,
even doing great isn't necessarily doing great
yes,
because
continue on. Yeah,
look, I thank God I don't have to date
I hear you. Believe me, it's
because
wild out there. I'm out there. So
it seems challenging in that like part of the distortion of the expectations of the people you end up dating with. Is it
yes,
is it relatively easy, could you go on a date? Yes. For some men, the answer may be no in a dating app, but like if you figure it out at a bar, okay, sure. But then what does that person expect? And if you've dated someone who's been on 100 dates with 100 guys who have 100,000 other dates that week, they're
yeah,
going to expect you to act in a way that may be different than how you were planning to show up, but their expectations can mold how they respond to your advances. So if you
okay,
meet somebody and they expect you to dump them and move on to the next person, you're
yes,
going to get an interaction that is less like, I wonder if this is going to work out because nothing's ever worked out. How dare you? Right? You can be pre rejected by a partner who expects that you're going to reject them, as an example.
yes. Hint
It,
of rejection.
rejection hurts. It's a lot easier to foreclose rejection than to risk being rejected. And we can talk a little bit about the kind of the pain of rejection. There was a question in the comments there.
Please,
Um,
please.
so physical pain and emotional pain are both experienced by the brain and presented to our consciousness by the same brain circuits. So if you put someone into a functional magnetic resonance imaging scan, we have systems in our brain to understand pain and to withdraw from it because physical pain indicates tissue damage. There are other systems that can misfire, like headache is a good example of this, idiopathic headache that just hurts in your head. And if you ask someone, where's the headache pain? Well, they can't really tell you because pain is a experience presented by your brain to your conscious experience, and the experience of anything hurting is an experience. And it turns out, headache pain, well, there's literally no place in the brain that's injured or in the head, right? There are
Yes.
nerves that can be sending input, that those inputs are kind of interpreted as more painful than otherwise. I actually have a condition called hemicrania continua, where some of the
Mhm.
time half of my head, literally like split down the middle,
Okay.
is painful to the touch. The side of my
Mm,
face, the side of my head, it's exquisitely painful to any kind of touch or sensation. And
right.
and it's not psychosomatic any more than all pain is psychosomatic. All pain is a neurological phenomenon presented to your consciousness such that you can experience it.
Yes.
And when we look at how blood flow changes in the brain using functional magnetic resonance imaging of people who are experiencing physical pain that we induce in the lab, like we can put a thing on your hand that is really hot that causes physical pain. And we see how the brain changes. And we can have someone be rejected. And we have experimental, modalities to simulate rejection, which I imagine are less painful than actual rejection. But it looks the same. If you give someone a hot sensation, a discomforting sensation, or you reject them from fun or enjoyment, their brains show the same patterns of change. So pain is pain is pain according to your brain, whether it's emotional or physical.
Right.
And to dismiss psychosomatic pain as, oh, it's just psychosomatic, all pain is psychosomatic. It's your
Mhm.
brain understanding an experience as painful. And humans evolved to avoid the heck out of that.
Yes.
And so it does take something different about a person to be like, let's do that again. And one of the things I thought was interesting, if not necessarily the most adaptive, about the kind of prior to modern manosphere trends, we had the pickup artists, right?
Pua. Yes.
The book, The Game, uh,
Yes. Neil Strauss.
which Neil Strauss like deeply regrets, by the way,
And
as
he's
an
turned
author.
over a new leaf as like a bro psychology, almost psychotherapy guru with some good
Yeah.
insight. So yeah, keep going. It's
And
great.
so what he proposed, along with the pickup artists in the book, is essentially if you want to get over rejection, what you do is you just get rejected a lot. You go and you ask out
Desensitization.
every woman on the street, and that actually has some valid psychological underpinnings. It's also relatively off-putting. Like
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to be subjected to somebody who is just asking me out, not because he thought I was special, but because he was trying to ask out 100 people in a day.
Yeah. The quota. You don't want the quota system of attraction. I agree. Nobody wants to
But
just be a number, especially
but
our business.
Gosh. None of our yeah, and I think 0 of our patients are looking forward to only being a number is pretty close to the right number for that measurement. But at least that required an understanding that there was gonna be an interpersonal interaction and that this could be painful, and they had a strategy to get over the painfulness of it, which, as a downside, didn't take into account the minds of the people you were essentially thrusting yourself onto.
Sure.
And so we have this tension between avoiding pain and avoidance by only existing in male spaces, only existing in spaces online, trying to influence your attractiveness before you actually experience the real possible rejection of human women or human men if you're gay. Like it's hard. I think gay men have experienced this a lot longer than straight men because, the beauty standards among gay men are on average higher. And there is something about the looks maxing trend, which is really taking what was standard in gay culture, like being hot matters, and bridging it to straight culture where not really. And we have
Right.
this like I don't think I maybe I've
Please.
done fine. I'm not a hot dude, but I'm funny enough and I can talk to people and people like my wife like that sort of thing. And I think many humans like understandable, funny, curious people. And if you have that going for you, great. But if you never get to make the case that you're humorous, I remember OK Cupid was a thing when I met my wife. And
Remember it too?
she got on just to see how well we'd match, and we were a 99% match after we'd already met in real life, so it was very validating. But
Ah,
a lot of the OkCupid thing, which wasn't as fast and furious as swiping, was you have a profile which you take some time on, and you get to decide, am I gonna present myself as funny? Am I gonna present myself as sensitive? Am I gonna present myself as a real man's man? Like, you get to make a choice, and someone would spend some time on a profile and decide whether they're gonna go through the trouble of messaging you, etc. And all that is taken away with swiping act.
agreed. No, I love that. Again, all the friction's taken away when there is no sort of process of courting or figuring out if you are a match, if you don't get to see those statistics. Someone I just saw a tweet the other day talking about the old OK Cupid model of, proportion, the percentage of compatibility, and that went away in favor of swipe-based model. I need to go look down further in the rabbit hole on that maybe. But I mean, I think there's a real product there, and I think people keep inventing it, and then it keeps getting out kind of greed or whatever motivation keeps saying, no, let's make it simpler with more pain. So it's very fascinating because humans need the right kind of inconvenience. We need the right. I don't want to go too much down a rabbit hole, but we really do. We need things that pull us out of our comfort zone. We will never choose that unless we reach that level of knowing discipline is the way.
I recently went on a well-being retreat and I learned a little bit, which was really helpful about yoga and physical fitness. And one of the things they taught me was that when you're doing exercise, physical exercise, like weightlifting, what you want to do is engage. If you're holding yourself up on your hands, you want to have your palm there, but you're actually engaging your fingertips. You're doing a
Okay.
twist so that your muscles in your forearm engage to support your wrist. And when I think of modern dating, it's like putting all the pressure on your wrists with none of the supporting musculature of your forearm to support it. It's very unstable and you're likely to get hurt emotionally because
Mm,
you don't have, if you go to a bar and you hit on somebody, I don't drink, so I don't spend a lot of time at bars. Like I literally never have.
yeah, same.
Uh,
Honestly.
but at least you have, on average, when you're out with the guys and you go hit on somebody, you've got friends around, so you have someone to walk back to pat you on the shoulder when she
Yeah.
says no.
To buzz off. You're like,
To
you'll get
buzz
him next
off.
time, champ.
But you have an attaboy from a friend, and I think male friendship is actually pretty crucial to being a healthy male human. Having women as friends is also clutch. Like if you're with a mixed group of individuals, you can get a variety of perspectives, but never directly interacting with anybody. Bad. And
Yeah.
never having to do it in real time. Bad. Because real time lets you slip up in ways that could be fun or funny or embarrassing or something. And it gives you a chance to recover from it. And I think
Yes.
the only thing sexier than a guy who knows the right thing to say is a guy who says something terrible and then is gracious when you shoot him down. He's like, yeah, that was not any good. Like falling on your face and picking yourself up and dusting yourself off is a version of hot that doesn't show up on a dating app and does show up in real life.
Man. Yes. You nailed it. Sorry if I cut you off there.
Not at all.
So my thought on that, and I want to get to Katie's question, get your opinion on it, but this idea of masculinity as anti-fragility, I like that a lot. I think we have to have honest conversation. We're getting closer and closer, more and more mainstream voices on different apps talk about men and women and how they typically, again, underline that 3 times, describe attraction in different ways, want different things. And the ability to be confident as men, because we've been told a lot about sensitivity. And I think, obviously, as a therapist, I think that's important. But when you're hitting on someone, when you're showing off, when you're showing competency, when you're showing confidence, that's a different skill set. And you have to have a father or some figure who helps mentor you in exactly what you just described of the healthy way of, I think of Sean Connery saying can't win them all in one of the Bond movies, right? When one of like the femme fatales flipped on him and he kind of just showed like, I can't win them all. And I think Daniel Craig's a good Bond because he shows even in the thick of it, like the ability to say, I'll think my way out of this. And you don't get that when it's an immediate swipe because there's no audience there to show that to besides yourself. And so you just showed a great example. Like I've been talking a lot about evolutionary therapy. What does that look like with all the Evo psych stuff we have now? I think it looks like sort of tribal dynamics of who are your safe tribes and who are the people in your community that can say your identity's still cool, dude. That just wasn't the person for you. Because that's kind of how we evolved to live.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lesson I learned really early as a therapist was that, I wanted to be therapist for everybody. And my
Mm,
colleague, like, look, you're not Deepak, right? Deepak is super calm and he's a great friend and he's going to be great for patients who want a super calm psychiatrist.
okay.
But you're edgy. Like some people need that. And I think the
I
same yeah, it's the same is true for dating. Some people need someone who's really chill and other people who need someone who's not. I think more about this now, I think, than I maybe ever did because I have a daughter who's 10.
okay.
I have a son who's also 10. They're twins. And I want to provide them with a model of what adult males should act like.
Beautiful.
And it's hard because I'm trying to be calm all the time and not flustered. Like it's working more than I thought it would, but I have something to live up to, which is
Mm.
I need to look I need to model for my kids what a man is and what they should be looking for in their life or what they should be like if they're my son. And at least my best version of that is staying cool under pressure, which I don't always do reliably. But if we want to get to the questions, let's do it.
Yeah, one last thing and I'll read it off. You're my guest here. So I know Martin Seeger has talked about masculine instincts that across different cultures in anthropological studies. For those of you out there, what that means is you go across and you look at different cultures, and if something is somewhat instinctual or innate, other cultures you can expect will have come to the same conclusions without contacting each other. And so across cultures, fighting and winning, protecting and providing, and emotional control are those 3 domains of masculine function that are so universal. And you just named that emotional regulation, cool under pressure element we've been talking about. I just think that's so cool. So a lot of good
I
stuff happened in
I
Britain
got
with
in a
the men's
I got in a
psychology.
car accident yesterday.
I remember, yeah,
I was rear-ended. Ended up in the ER last night, and my daughter asked why you're going to go. I said, "Well, just to make sure, because I'm your dad. I got to make
yeah,
sure I'm okay." I
yeah.
didn't even get angry after I got rear-ended. My kid's in the car. It didn't even occur. I mean, I've been working on equanimity, this staying balanced. But I said, look, he made his choice to rear end me and then actually bang us again, like to get away. The police eventually apprehended him, but he made his choice. That's on him. We get to
Yeah.
choose what we're going to do. And what I'm going to do is pull over and wait for the police to arrive, provide my report, and get the car towed. And that's what's going to happen. And we're going to get home safe. Um, and I
Wow.
think, if you're on a date with anybody, the number of times I've been on dates with people, which is not zero, where something terrible has happened in the middle of the date. Because I'm a physician, I get a call, someone has suicide attempt. I'm out with, my now wife and a bad thing occurred. Like the ability to have the bad thing happen and then be cool about it for them or for you.
Yeah.
Those are moments that people remember.
Yeah.
You
Do.
don't always get to like, you get to choose where you're gonna go on a date. I always like to walk. It's simple. You get to chat,
You do.
and it's active, and that's fun. But you don't get to choose what happens on the walk. You could be mugged. You could have whatever happen, and it may turn into a life-changing experience for the both of you. You literally don't get to know. You know, you're spending some amount of time together, and in that time, XYZ is gonna happen. But, I don't think it's about who paid for the meal. I think it's about how you work out who's gonna pay for the meal and how you work out who's gonna support one another when something terrible happens in the street afterwards or something great. It's about what you do in the moment that lets you prove who you are. And I hope there is a place for equanimity being maleness, being something society, but like we like guys
I
to
like
stay
that.
cool. Like Bond isn't flipping out and like losing his mind all the time. There's no time in a James Bond movie where like, I just can't. That's not, which
Yeah.
it's neither a good or bad thing, but it's not what we've epitomized as maleness and rewarded. But I think any man can aspire to being cool under pressure.
Yes, they
That's
can.
something, it's like you go to the gym, you can also meditate. You can do yoga, and those are, I think, traits of healthy masculinity.
Yes, love that. So I like that because that's getting to Katie Angelova's point. Like, she's someone who has a book called No Emergency, like the nervous system hijacking we get now. Everything's an emergency, and how to come away with that and say, no, it's actually not. The many early expectations and self fulfilling prophecies in dating and how it molds the process. So you were just talking about some of that with the idea of who pays for the date and all that stuff. She's been told if she has no intention of paying on the first date, don't bother. What do you think about? Katie, you might have not seen this. We talked about that a little bit at the beginning, but it's worth revisiting. Like these self-fulfilling feedback loops of being afraid of rejection and rejecting first. Any of your thoughts on her question there?
I got distracted by the person saying write poetry because I write poetry.
Yeah.
It used to be like a cool thing for dudes to write poetry. If you go back to, I'll get back to your question in just a second, but there was this real schism in the history of poetry pre and post Dante Alighieri. And so it used to be that poetry was all in the model of a guy named Guido Cavalcante, who was an Italian
Yes.
in the Renaissance. And Dante changed the game with the way he wrote poetry about Beatrice, who, by the way, he lost. Like he's writing endless poetry about a dead woman who died at like 18. So, yes, write poetry. If you can't express your feelings concisely, you're going to have a hard time convincing someone you're a real man, is what the history of humanity teaches us. I do think that if you're not going to be, if you have no intention of paying on the first date, if you have no intention of doing anything whatsoever, if you walk in the door closed to any possible experience, then why are you on a date? A date is about a give and take. Now, whether you choose at the end of the first date to split the check or not, how you negotiate that, that's what anyone should be judging.
I love that. Judge the process and how you think that through. Such a great therapeutic answer. How do you
Well,
come to your conclusions?
how do you come to your conclusions? I think the question, how do we decide who pays at the end of this date, is a fair question. And if the two
Right.
of you work it out well, you're probably going to be a good fit. I usually would say something like, well, yeah, I'd like to offer.
Yeah.
And if she's like, oh, that's great, then I do.
Yes.
And she's like, no one ever pays for me. Okay, well, now I know. Right. But
Yeah.
if you're going to insist on something before you even know who the other person is or what they value, it's not about who pays. It's about how you get to the decision of who's going to pay between the two of you. That is important. That's how you build a relationship, not how you end a date.
That's a mic drop. I would also say there's such little mentalization we have now, meaning the ability to know your own internal world and predict others. I see hateful online dating profiles, and I've seen them in the wild on dating apps myself, and I've seen them as memes, but a lot of don't waste my time, read my bio. This is probably going to annoy you. Stay away if you can't handle me. A lot of really hurt people who want someone, yeah, the claws out, who want someone to disprove their internal fears. It's very psychoanalytic. They want a parental figure to soothe after all of the micro rejections and the trauma really of continued sniping back and forth anonymously, pseudo anonymously. You've got a first name and a picture, but you've got this de-individuation online, and you get people who are so hurt who constantly want to throw up walls to see if somebody's going to stay. It's almost like an acquired attachment disorder syndrome, something, attachment disorder.
I mean, if you get slapped in the face 10 times in an hour, just randomly,
Yeah.
uh,
It's,
you're gonna feel weird, and you're gonna, some people are gonna choose to make a message that they hope will shield them from hurt. Ironically, it
Yes.
probably shields them from also everyone who just doesn't want to put up with it.
Because it seems to get to that mentalization part, if you step back and see how would I accept this? Would I think this is positive or negative? It's a negative vibe. It's a negative message and communication, even though the content is want to be treated well. But it's said as don't do this. And if only people could be better marketers for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, so some of the I remember the D pics exist, like men sending pictures of their genitalia, and the supply of D pic senders vastly overwhelms the audience who is thrilled to receive them. And some of that may be just selection bias. Like if you're going to send 1,000 pictures and you only want to get people who are going to be enthused to see a picture of your junk, well, it's going to be a smaller number of people, and the majority of people are going to be off put. But the one person who's like, yep, maybe the person for you. It may be a rational strategy. And so the rest of the women who are, or men for that matter, who are collateral damage to pictures of your junk, you don't really care about them. You have to turn off your mentalizing and only be interested in the experience of people who are buying what you're selling, which is debasement in many cases.
Ooh, okay. Wow, that's a really good point. And I'm starting to think systemically, and in the past, it's almost like reputation and communities were a bulwark, a way to guard against someone being a bad actor. The book The Wisdom of Psychopaths, one of the best books I've read by Kevin Dutton, the neuroscientist. Society can only really function with a certain proportion of people who have no empathy and are highly sadistic. And when you look at the ability to say, I don't care what this does to anybody else, but I need to meet the one person who's okay with me sending this kind of private picture. In the past, something like that would have been ostracized, or there's ways to say, hey, you could get ahead doing this, but you'll hurt a lot of people. So you have consequences for that. We all have to buy into this society thing. And now a lot of the guardrails for that have been taken apart by digitization. And we're trying to figure out how to make that work, because the West Elm Caleb situation, did you ever hear about that? The guy who got brigaded on TikTok? So there was a guy named Caleb, and he worked for West Elm Furniture, and he was a handsome online dater, part of that 10% we'd alluded to earlier of successful men on dating apps. And he was going on a lot of dates with a lot of women. And he was telling each of them that he wanted to date them exclusively and then having sex and ghosting them. Bad move in today's world. But this was a few years ago, pretty recent though still. And women collaboratively got together on TikTok, and their TikToks blew up and went viral, trying to find out who all he was dating and kind of shine the spotlight on him. So people are now reinstating that of, hey, you don't get to be a bad actor and get away with things. And it's interesting to see that in real time and how that functions with masculinity and femininity.
There was a question in the chat about why some women are attracted to dark triad behavior. And it's because it's sexy. Like if you don't know what you're
Yeah,
looking at,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, there is
There's
something.
answers to that.
The dark triad is high Machiavellianism, high psychopathy. So that's low empathy essentially, and it's antisocial psychopathy, Machiavellianism, narcissism.
Yes,
Third
that's
part
the
of the dark
three.
triad.
And then they've added sadism to make it a tetrad. Did you hear that? That's been like
Yep.
the past 5 to 10 years.
Dare to dream.
Okay,
If only you get to meet someone with all four. Look, people who are narcissistic like to, as a feature of narcissistic personality disorder, like to associate with other high status institutions or individuals. And so
yeah,
when you're on a date with someone who's got narcissistic personality features, they're going to make you feel like you're special because they're so special. Even being around them means you have to be special or they wouldn't even be there. And it
yeah,
feels good to feel special. And
always.
especially if this is your first rodeo and you've never been around a Machiavellian narcissistic manipulator before, you won't understand why they're spending so much energy and time and lavishing it on you until they're gone the next day and you never see them
Right.
again. Then it makes sense, maybe,
Yeah.
sort of, kind of. But it can be very damaging to be around someone who really can only tell you enough lies about you that are positive for you to relent to their advances, but they can't keep it up to have a long-term relationship. And so it's actually just as damaging to be a dark triad human as it is to engage with a dark triad human, because these are personality disordered individuals. They have impairments in empathy, intimacy, identity, and self-direction. They don't know who they are from day to day, from hour to hour in some cases, or why they do what they do. And so although they may be able to fake being passionate, it's
Yeah.
not the same as having durable passion for another person that can sustain over days to weeks to months to years.
Well, passion versus so actual passion versus kind of the counterfeit version of short-term limerence or infatuation. Like you gotta really look at this stuff early on. And it's tough because actually you have to do a little longitudinal because early on they look the same. So I mean, why is dark triad attractive? You nailed it, I would say. In our ancient history, men had to be able to provide, to protect, to show that they could win, to be self-promoters. So there's a lot to that that's really it's just dialed up too high. And I think we have to get to a point where we can say that as therapists because that's not politically incorrect.
Anyone can grab your hair and push you into a wall. Not anyone can do it with just the right reasons and can do it in a way that makes you feel safe, right? And can do
Well,
it on the right number of date for you, right? It takes a lot of, there's plenty of dating behavior that, like, in any other context would be totally effing crazy.
yeah,
Can you imagine just like, hey, Jeremy, how you doing? I grab your hair, I jam you into a wall. Great to see you.
yeah. 50 Shades of
That
Owen.
that would be strange.
Right.
And on a date, that could be contextually appropriate. And I think a lot of the problem is there is a lot of value placed on implicit mentalizing. Like, he needs to be able to perfectly imagine me, as opposed to we need to be able to reach a shared understanding of what would or would not be hot, such that there has been some explicit consent obtained, not in the heat of the moment. That's not hot. But
Mm-mm.
at the last date you had where some anticipation was built up, you may have a conversation about how the one time you can imagine that happening would be great. And then he can do something together with you and just check in the moment. Like, hey, is this cool? Okay, we're good. Right. And then you have this really exciting and consensual experience, as opposed to like, I just need a perfect mind reader who will always get it right and never get it wrong. Because you could mistake him being a great mind reader for him being relentlessly aggressive all the time with everyone. And it just happened to land at the right moment for you.
Yes. It's a big problem. I think you bring up a perennial issue in relationship and marriage therapy, actually, that we have to get to a point where you can, oh, let's see what we got.
This is my ginger soda,
That's
Sicilian
amazing.
lemon iced tea premium soda with a little bit of ginger,
Wow. Love that.
because it's spice without being, you get it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna belabor the point.
That's great, dude. No, that's beautiful. I think it's a great illustration. So when we talk about good boundaries and unromantic conversations, those have to happen. You did a great rejoinder there that the couples that don't ever talk about anything important and then just think things are going to fall into place are sunk. But the opposite of that is always talking everything to death. And so you have to have this ability to have the important conversations, get them out of the way, sacrifice a few hours of awkward seriousness, make them awkward and serious when they could have been fun. But then you have so much more room to have the serious, lighthearted stuff with all that other stuff behind you. And if more couples and even friendships did that, it would avert from this boom or bust. Everything's perfect, or we're going to have a knockdown drag out that could have been avoided with some carefully timed conversations. And that's such a huge problem across human relationships.
I think we confuse successful guesses with great mind reading
Ah,
at our
okay.
peril. And not every person you go on a date with is going to be a good fit. In fact, the overwhelming majority won't be. Like, it would
Right.
be surprising if the majority of people you went on dates with were a good fit. I would be surprised. I dated a
Yeah.
lot of people before I met my wife, and she was the best match of anyone I'd ever met.
Yes.
I couldn't have known that had I not been on a bunch of dates with people who are close. I
Yes.
almost married someone who was pretty close,
Right.
but not right.
Honestly, I think for the young men out there bringing it back to masculinity, they're going to have to get their feet wet and just get comfortable with the idea that you can meet people who aren't right for you. You can undergo rejection and you can have safe bases of people, safe, not in a corny way, but people who remind you of who you are and that you have good conversations with. And you're going to need that before really wading into a lot of negativity in my view.
I mean, a way of thinking about it is like, look, if you don't click with someone, you can just acknowledge, like, we did not click.
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
And also, every person you don't click with, like, you may have even people like if you don't get along at all, like, the chances are you don't get along. If
Yeah.
you get along, but you just are not going to be an item, maybe she's got a friend.
Yeah. Great.
Uh, Maybe she'll save your children's life one day. Real story. I Many, many, many years ago, when OkCupid was like just a thing in New York City, I went on one date with somebody and we hit it off. We've been friends ever since. I convinced her she was with a guy who wasn't a good fit for her. And like, she met this guy at a party and I'm like, he sounds like a great fit for you. Like, years later. She ends up as a high-risk maternal fetal medicine doctor, and my wife and I are pregnant with twins. And so who did I
Mm.
call? The person I went on literally one date with and never another date in my life, and we just hit it off as friends, and lo and behold, she was able to get her dad on the phone who wrote the textbook about intrauterine growth restriction. My children's lives were saved because I was decent to someone on a date who I wasn't gonna end up sleeping with.
Wow.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Like, everyone you meet could be someone cool in your life. You don't get to choose the context. It might be at work, it might be at a car show, it might be on a date, but that person could be tremendously important to you in a context other than having a long-term sexual romantic relationship. There are other ways to have valuable relationships in your life. You and I are friends.
Absolutely.
We get along great and have for years now. Jeremy, I gotta say, I'm not leaving my wife for you.
Okay. Okay. Not a curveball. This is not a curveball.
For the audience, Jeremy knows Carlene very well. They've done a lot of clubhouse rooms together. Also, they get along great. Look, it's not everyone fits that there's not that many slots in anyone's romantic life, even if they're polyamorous. I mean, we've all seen that probably a joke thing for the polycule in San Francisco.
Yeah, the ad where it's, oh my gosh, I wish I could put that in the air. I might have to put that in the actual description of
It's an
this
amazing,
article.
it's
Yeah,
amazing. I think it's got to be a joke,
I think it's a joke.
but it sticks the landing on there's truth in the comedy.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. Seeking new I don't wanna click on this and have a video come up, but it's very specific, and I think it gets a lot of the kind of ways that you hear people talk in polyamorous situations, like the lingo.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot like the dating we're discussing. Like, must make more than X 100,000 a week, and our play nights are Thursdays, and Jeff runs the house as the president. It's a rotating presidency of our polycule. Like, it's off-putting because it's demanding.
Yeah, okay.
The
Like
the one there's a lot of hate in the comments about coffee because it's cheap. I will say one thing about coffee as a date because there's a good psychological reason or physiological reason that becomes psychological reason. When our heart rate goes up from something like caffeine exposure and you are with another human, you can feel your heart rate go up and imagine that you're attracted to them
yes.
because your heart rate jumps. And so coffee is a great date, not because it's expensive, but because if you're vibing with the person and your heart rate goes up, you may attribute that to them and that can become true over time.
So, I love that. That reminds me of Lisa Feldman Barrett and her work on how emotions are made and her talk about feeling states versus emotions, because emotions are the labels we add on top, and feeling state is like heart rate goes up, something's going on there. Love that. There was a big controversy on X months ago about like coffee for men. So this is something. Like if men take a woman on coffee dates, that's low effort and he's a broke guy and he's a loser and you should never let a man take you to coffee because he should pay for you dinner. So how much of this is rage bait, dude? But it was a real thing where people were at least playing it straight, probably again rage bait. Because on
Mhm.
these sites you get perverse incentives. If people fight with you, that's still views.
Yeah.
So basically, there was a huge brigade against coffee as a date because men who do it are low effort or broke. And the other people are saying, no, no matter how much money you have, it's a good date with a clean escape if it's super awkward.
Some of us are both low effort and broke.
That's funny. Some coffee's expensive too. If you
Some
get the
coffee is
right
expensive.
coffee,
Yeah.
it's as much as a small plate at a restaurant.
Or-
Yeah, or over. Oh my gosh, dude. Yeah. I mean, you got to be careful what you put in your brain. There's more than ever. You could put a lot of stuff that makes you cynical, and I think that's a big lesson with the manospheres. Who are the dudes going to listen to? Are you going to listen to guys who hate on romance, the idea that any woman is not a gold digger? I don't advise it. Are you going to listen to stuff that says all men are trash? I
It
don't
seems like
advise.
I I think it's like this is not a serious idea, but like there should be like date escrow where
Okay.
like you go and you put $50 in the bank and then you go out to coffee. And if both of you agree it was often, boom, you unlock the $50. Have a great dinner after our coffee date if we both agree it was great.
I love that idea. Ooh,
Let's
really good
go on
idea.
escrowdate.com. If we both agree it was worth our time, we've taken each other out to dinner. But we both
That'd be
know
a great show.
neither one of us is cheap. We both put
Yeah.
money in the pot. We went
Yeah.
Dutch on the agreement that it was a great date.
Very good point. That'll be a great show too. Great little social
But
experiment.
I mean, like, I would literally pay more if I was still dating to have some signal after the date of how it went, like many people
Okay.
would, right? And I'd also pay more to not go out to dinner and be stuck at a whole dinner with someone who I wasn't vibing with. If you're not vibing with someone in 20 minutes, you're, I guess if it's, maybe it'll grow over the course of a dinner, but if it's awful, you don't wanna be stuck. You don't wanna go to 11 Madison Park for course after course with someone who it's worth more money to be able to escape.
Yes, I
You
think
can
you're
always go to
abs
dinner next if you have the time. I don't know.
no, I think you just nailed it. I
Or
mean,
start a really expensive coffee spot. The coffee's $100. Are you happy now?
yeah, oh, man. I mean, no, I think
That's like expensive coffee.
yeah, meeting in a location where there's coffee and then food after is just absolutely smart because then you can play it by ear and be like, "Hey, we've been talking here a while. You wanna get something to eat?" I mean, I've done that before because
Yeah, also go to yoga. It's just like there's an overrepresentation of women. Be a real man.
being
Yoga,
a real man, go to yoga
Pilates,
now see,
there are
now we're getting
hacks.
back into
I'm just saying.
pickup. Go ahead, say it again.
But like if you can like she's gonna know if you're strong if you did a whole yoga class and survived. They're
Dude,
hard.
you're not joking. I had a friend in
Oof.
Colorado. She was a fellow therapist and she invited me to one of her yoga classes. And I went, and some of the positions and the weight that I had to hold of my own body, like at certain angles. So that's a pretty good suggestion.
Yeah. Kidding, but thank you for having me on, Jeremy. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you. This is great. Everybody follow Owen. We'll have continued interactions. I really enjoy his work, and he's somebody we can have honest conversations with about what men need and what women need. Everybody just has to be honest. What are you looking for? And let's not play all the games.
So
So,
honest to like there's honesty, which is good, and there is utter and total transparency. Not a every date is not a deposition, right? So you're not
that's a
under
clip.
oath. You don't have to answer all questions or else you're going to go to jail with the utter truth. Like having some ability to gild the lily is good judgment.
Yes, that's the grist of good flirting too. So that was beautiful. Thank you.
Th- Thank you for the time.
Thank you, sir. Talk later.